I want to move to that last question about who do you think I should invite next?
And the other person I'd recommend as well that I think to speak to is Malene Jacobsen. So I'm
And
very
that
fortunate.
should be her picture. Is that
Spot on.
correct?
Her, yeah. So I'm quite fortunate because I do actually work with her now. So she's one of the leaders I mentioned earlier as well. So she's she always says like I'm very honest. And she is. She's incredibly honest, very straightforward. You always know where you stand with her. But part of it is that she's also just the newest certified Scrum trainer in South Africa and actually in Africa. So for me, that's on my journey towards becoming a certified Scrum trainer. She played a big part in that journey as well, because I kind of saw her when she was beginning that journey and saw how much time and effort and all of that she put in, and the dedication she's put towards her working in the Agile community and in companies as well. And I think it's worth having a conversation with her as well.
Thank you for inviting her, because indeed, well, it kind of brings back the whole or cycles back the whole story to the beginning when we were talking about habits and about doing small little steps and learning. And that's basically what you say is what she's been doing. Okay, she achieved it, but she worked really hard for it a long time. And we talked about how some things take a long time. It's not just, well, people see the end result now, but they don't know how long people have been working on. And what you're saying is
Exactly.
that you've seen this from a close distance from when she started, and you learned and you saw. So that is an inspiration, at least for you. That's what I'm hearing, and I assume it's an inspiration for other people as well. Hi, today I'm talking with Malene. She's an open book. You can ask her anything, and that means we talked about many, including moving countries, the advantages of being fired, and even the typical kids' meal in restaurants. I'm Yves Hanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button, because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it. Hello everyone, and hello Malene. That's Malene. That's how to pronounce it.
Yes, Malene.
Malene. And I've jumped right into that, and I wanted to show people a little bit where you are, and that's always the interesting part, working with multiple screens. So this is where I am. So we're first going to Belgium in Europe. So this is where I am. And now we're going to Cape Town, where you are, and that we're moving a little bit. So really downwards a little bit on completely. Oh well, I don't know if it's exact location, but it's near the ocean, I would say, or at least much nearer than I am. And let's bring you back on screen. And let me also do that on the other screen. And from my side, it's 7 o'clock in the evening, a few minutes after 7. What's the time on your side?
Well, the interesting thing right now, because you're probably in summertime, we actually have the same time right now. So it's also 7 o'clock here, even though they were so far away from each other. I think always that's quite
exactly.
impressive.
That is the interesting part. Depending on how Google Earth or we're moving, we're like, I've talked with people who look very close, and actually there's a few time zones away, and now we're moving very far, but on the same time zone. And indeed, because it's summertime, it is the same in some other parts of the year that might be a little bit different. Recording this at the end of June, well, 19th of July, so that is summer indeed in this part of the world, at least.
And it's winter on my side. Hey, that's the interesting part.
That is indeed which is interesting. Huh? And we kind of jumped right into that. But for the people that don't know you, let's introduce yourself a little bit. Who are you?
Thanks. So I'm Malene. I like to say I'm the Dane, but live in South Africa. So I am used to the European atmosphere. I have now been in South Africa for 8 years. I'm an enterprise agile coach and trainer. right now working with one of South Africa's biggest insurance companies and transforming them, heading up the transformation of them of 30,000 people. So it's a big beast, old company of nearly 200 years old. So it's a good challenge.
Wow. And is that why you moved to South Africa, or how did that happen?
Actually,
Would you
no, there
want to
was no, of course. Like I say, I'm an open book. You can ask anything. It wasn't because of that. That happened afterwards. It was to try live and work in a different country. So I worked previously in a worldwide company where I got introduced to Cape Town and I fell in love with the city. I think anybody should. We have one of the 7 wonders, right? What's not to love here? To look at that every day, it just makes a smile on your face. So I went back to my boss back then and said, "Can you please send me here?" And he said no. And I said, "Well, then I resign." And I to pack down 2 suitcases and went on a tourist visa around in Cape Town to find a job, and I got a job. It's, of course, this was a simple version of the story, but yeah, now it's nearly 8 years ago.
Yeah, there is always a simple version, and there is always the detailed version that is a lot less simple, probably. Moving countries for people who've never done it, and I've moved also for not 8 years, it was just 8 months, moved to France, and indeed, it's a lot more complex than it sounds, indeed. But it's a great experience to move, to live in a different country, to have a different kind. And Belgium, France looks very similar. It looks very close, but still there is cultural differences. Still there's lots of differences that we have, and yeah. Africa is for me, it's also one of the places that I really want to visit. We were actually scheduled to visit multiple countries in Africa we were scheduled to do that in the summer of 2020, but of course, due to COVID, we were not allowed to go there. And ever since, it's been postponed, and then that's the hard part with children, then agendas and blah blah blah. We didn't do it, but it still is something that is for me on my mind. Like, okay, definitely a country I want to visit.
It's amazing how still the stereotypical lives around Africa as a country. Like often when I go, so I have my family in Denmark still, and I go back on holiday, and I will meet people and say I live in South Africa. They will ask, "What NGO are you part of?" I'm like, I actually live here. I'm not part of an NGO. It's actually like any other big European cities. Internet, we have lights, we have everything.
That's indeed sometimes people, when you don't know a country, people might have all kinds of ideas on how it is, which is exactly one of the reasons why people should move from time to time to other countries to learn about different countries and different cultures and everything. And we jumped right into that, so that I already love it. And like you said, you're an open book, so we'll probably have lots of other questions and things to discuss. And that very first question for me is, what is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in who you are?
That is a tough question, because as I say, I am an open book. I don't think I have specific something that nobody knows. I think one thing that maybe stand out now, the question was who has shaped who I am today. I think one of the more a little bit funnier story, I don't know if it was funny when it has happened, but that the story, looking back now, I can smile. I actually got fired from my very first job. Coming out of the university and starting in a job and haven't even been there a year and then get fired. I don't think.
And you were what age at that time? If you left
I was
university?
only like 20, 21.
Wow.
It was my first job as a software developer.
And is there anything on that feedback that you got, that you understand better now what happened? Like you said, you can smile about it. Is there?
I think of course, there's always many reasons behind it, right? But what really stood out to me and why it shaped me of who I am today, it was again, there's many reasons, but what stood out to me right now is I don't know if I can see lack of leadership, but something built in me. So I had a woman leader back then, and I took away from me as saying, like, I got the feedback, to keep it simple, saying I'm very passionate and I maybe was too far ahead in my thinking of who I was. But I was more like, again, I'm an open book, and like I got the question, where do I see myself? And I dreamed big also back then. and I felt I was lacking the support and mentorship. And I think that's why it shaped me today, because I'm like, who are you as a leader to tear down such a young person that actually just have big hopes for themselves? And that has shaped myself. I did for a couple of years ago a talk at one of the global gatherings where I said, becoming the leader I wish I had myself, because that has actually driven me. I was just a young lady in a man-dominated world, right, that so badly actually wanted somebody to look up to that could support and grow me. And that really stood out for me as a leadership. You have so much responsibility of actually support new talent.
And yeah, I think that's a very important remark, because indeed, as a 20-year-old, you don't have much baggage, you don't have much experience, but you do have lots of dreams. I mean, people at the age of 20, 21, we have lots of dreams. Most of us want to change the full world, and we join a company and we see all these kind of things that are probably not going really as we thought the world should work, so we want to do it. But then it's up to leadership for me indeed to teach people to say, okay, maybe you want that, maybe I did want that as well, but right now this is not the moment, or maybe it will be the moment, or maybe you don't understand, whatever, but we need some kind of guidance to help us understand and maybe help us to change that world in whatever that means, or change ourselves. I think that's indeed, yeah, I was really lucky to have, I'm still proud of the very first boss I had, but if I look back now, that was more luck than anything else. Yeah, I didn't really, in my first job, I didn't select my boss, for example. I selected the role that I wanted. I had some ideas, but I didn't even see the interview as something like, oh, I can select as well, which I do now.
Yes, exactly right. You grow with that, right? You think like back in the days, you first out of university, you just think I have to take the first and best job, right? Your parents stand there saying, "Oh, it's so good you have a job," and you also don't want to let them down. So it's a very much, of course, you mature with age and get the understanding. And I think it shaped me quite early, and it actually, and that's why I'm saying I'm smiling now, because I think now it was one of the big gifts I ever got in my career, because I never again was afraid of losing a job. Because I got quite quickly up on my feet again. And
been there, done that. And
exactly.
So, okay,
I got that learning so early. Where I've actually now thought back in, like, if I look back, I was actually afraid, what if I hadn't got fired? I would maybe still have been there and would have shaped my career as I
with bad leadership and everything. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, but it's I think it's very important as a message, because indeed, so I've coached, and I think both of us and multiple people, we have coached people who are so afraid of getting fired, and sometimes like maybe that is actually a good thing to happen. And I'm not that I'm wishing it for everyone, and of course I've been fired as well, and the first time that happens is like, whoa,
it's devastating. Yeah.
Yeah, but when you look back, and it's like, okay, maybe there were all kind of reasons, and sometimes it's on my side, sometimes it's on the other side, sometimes like, okay, I was not maybe in a good place or whatever. And these days I'm like, okay, this is okay, this is part of, I take care of my own safety net and whatever, and I make sure that it's okay. I really like that. So it could have been traumatic and 21, but it turns out not to be. That's what I'm
it was when it happened, of course. That's what we all get, as you say, the first time that happens. That's a big shock. And I think you point out something nice there, because now working in with agile coaching and coaching people, right, in that world, there's way too many that's actually like stuck in their job for way too long with being unhappy, and they might never have experienced something like that, so they have that afraidness of actually losing their job, but it might be the best thing that actually could happen to them.
Yeah, that's it's a very great story to share, and maybe, like you said, as if you're an open book, maybe people already know it, but it's an important one. And indeed, some of these questions are about, okay, some people know, maybe not everybody, but this is just looking really like, okay, what has influenced you and what is important to share about that part. And that was a very nice story to share. So thank you for that.
Thanks. Pleasure.
I want to move to that second question, that if you had not been doing what you've been doing now, and you kind of said already a bit, I might have still be in that job, but was there anything else that could have been, or that you were destined to become?
Oh, as a little girl, I dreamt of being a chef, and I
Of
think my
being
friends, a chef.
Wow. Okay.
Yes, and I think still my friends think I should be. So that is a side hobby of mine. That's maybe also something people don't know. But I get very easily bored, and chef is actually very much as a factory, right? You just produce food in a restaurant for a certain amount. So I actually realized that is actually, I like food. I like to make food, but not the same thing over and over again. I think
So if you're, but that is an interesting thing, because I have a son who's now studying for this kind of role and working, not as a chef yet, but it's interesting to see, because indeed sometimes in a restaurant we have to make the same food over and over again. But I see many chefs really on the good restaurants to, well, keep adapting, I would even say kind of iterating their food and finding other kind of things. And that's a little bit what I'm hearing from you, that if you would have done it, you would not be the person to work. Okay, let's make the complete opposite in a McDonald's, making the same burgers over and over. That's definitely not you. It's more like being a creative person, making new food kind of things, or in anything. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, but also the more I think about it, so that's more because it's like I do like to make food, right? And my friends do love my food. If I'm truly like looking at also my career so far, now the question is, where would you else have ended up? Even though, let's say I have studied to become a chef, I don't think I would even have end up there, because same as like I started software engineer, right? I didn't end up as a developer either, because something has always dragged me towards the human, something with humans and the complexity of the human being.
And as
Like,
a chef, you're in the kitchen, maybe working with people, but if you work in a restaurant, you would, what I'm kind of hearing, you maybe even more like to be in the restaurant itself, working with your customers. Is that a kind of direction that
yeah,
could have
and
done
maybe
more?
like what comes very naturally to me is the leadership role, going in and lead a team, right? So for me, that just like that I've done my whole life, and I think that was also back then when I see, right, like I've always quite early taken on a leadership role, also from my learning from getting fired, right? I very much shaped that whole idea, how should a good leader look like? And I think that would fall natural to me. I see myself, I'm a big want to be part of a team. I want to be part of something that does great. I don't like to work by myself. So that whole collaboration, right? And I think, yes, we see the big Michelin stars restaurant there, you actually get some of it. So it'll probably
I was thinking about that,
yeah.
because that chef is really is a leader of a team.
Yeah.
It's not just, so I'm hearing it's not a small restaurant. You prefer to work with a team. You work when, and maybe you invent some of the food, but actually your team is making more the food than you're making, because you work with the people and the team. That's a little bit what I'm hearing there. Even
Yeah.
though you're inspired by the food and by making things. So that's really a completely different kind of career as what you're doing here. And at the same time, like you say, leadership role, it's the same.
Same skill set, right? Yeah. I think that stands out, where we need to embrace that more. And the whole, like, the more we talk now, even we can see the agile behavior coming out, right? The collaboration, the work together to deliver something. Like it goes across so many things we do.
But this is also why the question is, if you had not been doing what you've been doing now, but before, in an earlier version, that was if you had not been into IT. But a lot of people in agile worlds don't even consider it IT. It's more like working with people, and sometimes it depends a little bit on the role, of course. Some are really developers, some are more on a project owner side or a coach side, but a lot of it is about working with people, and yeah, that's very similar to indeed a lot of other roles. That's an interesting thing. And that food, maybe go a little bit into that. Is there, do you know where that's coming from? Is that something that came from home, or how did you get that?
No, definitely. My whole family is a foodie. I lived up very much like a big, what's it called in English? Now I only have the Danish word for it, but like mom and dad, my two siblings, and my mom and dad still together now, 45 years. of marriage.
That's also
Very
impressive.
inspirable. Yes, exactly. So very like that core family grow up, and they're also older generation, right? So you will often see the woman in the kitchen, but my dad actually stands more often in the kitchen than my mom. And it will always be challenging, and we've always been also as kids been taken to a restaurant and we were allowed to pick anything. I don't think I've ever had to pick from a kiddies menu. So yeah, I grew up with love food.
It's interesting that you say that, because we've been doing similar things with our children, that when we went to restaurants, the kids menu is like always like our children like, no, what's that? That's just not real food. We prefer to have, okay, let's have a grown-up meal and then share it with 2 children or something like that, or have 2 grown-up meals for 3 children, things like that. And I think it's kind of, yeah, it's a way to learn children also to deal with food, and a lot of the kids menu is always the same in whatever restaurant you go to.
The kiddie menus, right? Nuggets and fries. And I think it's also that thing as a parent. Now I became a parent myself 3.5 years ago. And I think the important is that thing. I learned myself that thing about saying, don't assume that they don't like it, right? If they want to taste the olive, then taste the olive. Like, I can't say you don't like it, right? That whole be experimental of it. If they're willing to put it in their mouth, let them.
And they will decide themselves what
Exactly.
they like and don't like, and get to learn some of that stuff. It's and feel probably also, well, the leadership in that, like, okay, you can go for some of these things. That's the interesting part. Thanks for sharing that, because it brings an extra dimension to that role that you said that could have become there. And also, well, very inspiring, of course, if your parents are still together after so many years. That's also leadership. That's also about working, because, well, marriage is really hard. You need to work hard and you need to communicate.
Isn't it the most difficult team collaboration you have to do? Eh? It never stops.
I think so. It never stops, indeed, and I think we've seen many people where it's hard, and yeah, just for myself, I can definitely see it. It's a lot of work. We still need to work really. And kind of talking about hard things, what do you consider your biggest challenge, and why is that a good thing for you?
Is it personally? My biggest challenge personally? Can be anything.
You can select anything you want. Of course, anything you want to be open on the internet. It's your responsibility to know what you want to share or not.
Because I think it's my competitiveness. I don't, and that's not a secret. Everybody that knows me knows I'm ridiculous competitive. Why is that a challenge? I think I'm battling these days where I'm like, I always give myself 120% into things because I'm so competitive. And it's not always for the sake of winning, it's just to make it better. So that's the whole mindset of saying we can always make it better. And I think sometimes, like I also once actually created a talk on it, is Agile driving you insane? Like that whole thing about constantly getting better, inspect and adapt, right? Like that's so deep in me that sometimes I'm actually exhausted.
It's not a joke. It's something I've said before, is that Agile, for the people who really want to do the good thing and have that competitive edge that you're talking about, making things better, it's very dangerous for these people to go into a burnout, because 120%, it's not sustainable. I mean, 100% is not sustainable. If you go beyond it, we can do that. We can run very fast, very quickly, but only for a short time. And Agile, if you're working and improving yourself, everything, it's really dangerous, I think, at some point. So how do you deal with that?
I remind myself, and that's where I think the principle is so important, right, about sustainable pace. Because, and I think many people should print that one out. Now I'm also thinking about the companies I'm working in, right? We are so under pressure in the world of performing on deliver, right? The social media, creating a picture of, I think of the younger generation that feel they have to live up to that and those things, right? I'm like, I'm not so sure it's healthy for us. And I think that's why it's one of my downsides, saying, what am I doing about it? Because I'm not sure I found the middle way yet. Because the other aspect of it is also, I often ask myself, I need to slow down and take a breather. But then on the other side, and I'm asking myself, how can I work more to become less competitive? But the other side, I'm also, what if I didn't have it? So a little bit to your question, like, what if I'm not doing what I am doing today? Well, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be where I am today either.
So finding that balance and indeed, like, okay, you want that.
Yes, and it's a challenge, right, of, as you all say, not burning out, and find that balance of still. And I think that also comes into when your job is also your passion and it's your everything you believe in, right? Then it's difficult to find the balance. Like, my brain doesn't turn off when I turn off the laptop. What do you then do?
You haven't found the button yet to turn off your brain. That's
no, right? Like, we actually knowledge work. It doesn't just work like that. So I do see that as a challenge.
I understand that also because, well, you talked about becoming a parent of a young child. That I when I hear you talk about this, I immediately have a thing. Oh, you probably also want to be the best possible parent for this child. You want to be the best. Well, we're here doing a podcast, so you want to be the best person answering these questions. You want to be the best.
It's not the best. It's more that it can always become better.
So you're always seeing what you do something that, hey, I could have improved this, or I could do better version of that, or how should I do it?
Yes.
So it's not. It's what I'm trying to make sure I understand it correctly. When you say I don't want to be the best, so you're not competing with the rest of the world, but you're competing with the version of you yesterday. Is that how I should see it?
Yes, it changed over the years. So if you ask the 20-year-old me, it was definitely being the best in the world. I think with the agile coaching role and to perform an agile coach, a scrum master role, you really need self-awareness, right? That's one of the key things. And I think for me to have gone that whole journey for so many years now, I believe I have a lot of self-awareness. So it has changed from being it's about me to no, it's about a better version of me. And I actually go into that whole thing. So I have a team now that I look at as saying, how can I actually be better for you guys, right? Where for 10 years ago, it would have been, no, you need to make me look good. So it is really, you put it very nicely, right? It's not so much to be the best anymore. It's more about how can I be a better version tomorrow? So my surroundings is actually performing better. So I think especially like with parenthood, right? That is so ridiculous difficult. Like we all know the small kids getting tantrums and stuff, and like I take myself these days, he's 3.5 years old, right? Pop a tantrum. I'm like, there's actually nothing I can do. She just has to experience this, and it's okay.
But already knowing that and having indeed the self-awareness about, okay, this is not about me, this is not about my partner, this is maybe not even about the world, this is something happened and this child needs this at this moment. And okay, and of course I will protect and make sure that nothing dangerous happens or that it's safe. But at the same time, it's like, okay, maybe when they're having the tantrums, holding one way or another to kind of say like, okay, it's okay, you can have the tantrums, and even if it drives me crazy, because that's the other part.
That's the other part, yeah.
Drives us crazy.
Yeah, true.
It's but that I think that's it takes a lot of self-awareness, and I think, well, this is definitely not something I seen coming when I became first a parent. Like in the beginning, you think, I see some parents where their children have tantrums. Like, this is not going to happen to me. Duh, it does.
It's really a steep learning curve, right, to become a parent.
Exactly, and the manual. Well, I've never found it, or I never understood it anyway. What was how to deal with.
But it actually comes into the whole thing about people are complex, right? The human nature is so complex, and we have to remember that. And now we're trying to put these small kids that have no experience. I like to say, right? They come out, they know nothing. They have to get all programmed into them, right? Like.
And I think it's important because, like you say, when they have tantrums and everything, there is something in that child that has something, and in most cases it means it doesn't understand it, and when we get tantrums because they get tantrums, then things get even more complex. And so if we don't understand it, how could a child that's 3 years old or 2 years old already can understand it? No, it's much more like, okay, it's okay, I know you don't understand it, and it's okay, it's something, and it's very easy to say in the middle of whatever happens. It's a lot harder, I think.
I actually, so I have this saying where I think I use both in my leadership style and my parenting, and it's about no person wakes up in the morning and saying they want to be a bad person. Like you don't wake up and say, today I really want to make a life hell for my partner or something. You don't do that, right? And then if you have that view, you would
You
understand
don't?
how much
Oh,
it's.
okay.
I don't. Maybe you do. Maybe a percentage of us do, right? Maybe have a disease. I can't. I'm not in the nature to be able to say that. But most of us doesn't wake up and decide.
Exactly. Well, but that's why I of course make a joke out of it. But I think this is really valuable to say that there could be a percentage, but like most of us, we don't want that, and people still will see us sometimes like, did you do that on purpose? No, I didn't, and I didn't wake up in the morning thinking I will make your life harder.
No, and if we understand that, we will understand more. Okay, we get impacted by the environment we are in, right? And that thing, both in parenthood and leadership, you can actually use that saying it wasn't a person deciding. A kid doesn't decide to have a tantrum; it just happened. What an environment made it happen. Employee didn't decide to behave badly. What they didn't decide to not perform, right? So that's a lot my view, saying what is environments making us behave like we do.
Yeah, and I want to bring it back also a little bit to what you said earlier on about performing and everything. It's like most people really want to perform. I want to do a good job, and let's face it, we have just come out of a pandemic, and it was really hard for many people to just survive. And a lot of people I heard it on the show, but I've seen it also in the coaching, are really still trying to grasp on what just happen to me. And now all of a sudden companies are like, okay, it's over, let's get back to business, and yeah, but I'm not sure I already survived. That's what I see in some people.
And the most
Did
shocking
you?
part is there, right? So my little girl was born 2 days before South Africa went into a lockdown. And it's such a nice
Wow.
reminder because that means she's now 3.5 years old. That means it's 3.5 years ago it started. If I ask you how long would it be, is it ago? Like I personally wouldn't say it's 3.5 years ago.
Right. It felt like almost, well, maybe a month or two ago or something like that.
Yes.
Like, yeah, but it's true. It's I had a discussion with some friends that over the weekends, like, did you organize that, or last time we saw each other at your house, was that then? And then it's really, I had to look. It's insane how how long it's been, and still, and it feels kind of over, and at the same time it's not over yet. So it's like, wow, we're
But it's also
still.
understand that whole change we were through, right? I look at myself and think, so I got our little girl, I became a parent just as it hit. And I realized when they start opening up, so South Africa was in a lockdown for very long. And when they started opening up and we, for example, had to go into office some days, I was like, I don't even know how to be a parent, get up in the morning, get my kid dressed and go into an office. I've never done this. So like the change, because it was so long, right? The changes in how we are, who we are as a human, just completely changed. And we can't go back from that. Like,
But it's interesting also because what you just described is, I think, all parents recognize that at the beginning, at the moment you start back going to work, and depending on how long you stayed at home for parenting leave, it's really hard. But you had to do it in a completely different environment, because before there was, okay, you were probably going to the office all the time, then you stay home with your child, and COVID hit, and you're no longer allowed to leave your house and everything, and all of a sudden it opens up, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, what part of which change is where? That's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
yeah, and the interesting thing is, I don't think we recognize how much change we have been through in such a short time. And that actually changed our lives so drastically.
I agree. It's been, well, we've been talking about here on the show, multiple people that said, indeed, wait a minute, it's before we said we always have to be together, and now we realize that it's actually possible to do some of the things remote. I had an interview yesterday with someone who said, actually, I've seen that some of my trainings are better online because all different kind of reasons. So it was interesting to hear people saying, really realizing like, okay, now I actually have a choice for what part will I do it online and for what part will I do it in person. And that was like 5 years ago, that would not have been an option. So that is really where the world has changed a lot, I would say.
No, you're spot on. Spot on.
I want to move to that next question because, like, you already kind of, your answer was you're a very driven person. You have very much passion. That's how I know you also have seen some of the work that you've done and on things that you do online. I feel a lot of desire, a lot of passion. Do you know where that's coming from?
I think it's actually some of the stuff we have talked about. Of course, that my competitiveness, and then it actually comes back from. I think it was a shock for me to come out into the work environment after my studies, and I don't know. I've just always been dreaming big. I like Steve Jobs' quote, "I'm here to put a dent in the universe," and it took me long to find my passion. But I always had a drive. I always had a drive to become better.
And do you know where that is? If I want to go, if you want to talk about it, but do you know when you were young, you said you always had that. Do you see where that's coming from? Was that stimulated one way or another, or
I think
know?
as much as we foodies in my family, we also all ridiculous competitive. Which means a funny little story. Of course, in Denmark, Christmas is very big, and I've had Christmas every year with my family. And since we were very small, my mom did this tradition about the house would get a Christmas gift from Santa Claus with being a board game. So like my parents have this whole wall full of board games because every year we get 1 or 2 board games. Which meant from we were very small, we will always be, Christmas time was always a big competitive.
And it's not that they as parents they said, okay, we let the kids win.
No, exactly. Like, no. Definitely not. Hey, still. So the funny thing is now all my siblings are older than me. They have more kids than me, and now my parents are even teaching their grandparents in this. And it will be, I get this call, and so we live close to the German border, so we of course also a bit impacted by the German language. So they have this saying of saying, you like, if we play Uno, then you're the next Uno Meister. So like I don't know what English word actually, like you might have the same in Belgium. Yeah, like you're the winner, right? So what exactly. Game? So I would get a call where this person, like my little nephew on 6 years old, said, "I am the winner." So like, I think we're driving hard in my family, the winning mentality, where we really want to beat each other. I still remember.
And I want to go a little bit at it because what I hear is that it's competitive, but at the same time, it's with joy, and it's the competitive feels friendly in the sense that, okay, I can kind of, I don't know, throw a party because I won. Is that how I see it, or is the downside also for the others, like, damn it, I lose, or how should I see
I don't
that?
think I think we all bloody good winners, but because we've been taught like we actually we bad losers, but then we we struggle to stop again, because like if you beat me, I'll play again so I can win over you, right? Like it becomes this constantly competition. Like then we'll find another game where I can beat you in. So it's actually more that drives
so
us.
it's not that when you lose that you're kind of like, okay, damn, tantrum and I don't want to play. No, it's even the opposite. Let's play again. Let's 3 out of 2 or whatever.
It's exactly. No, we said 5 out of 6.
Okay, sorry, I interrupted you a few times. So there was another part of the story that you wanted.
No, I just want to add. I think this is a funny story. Now my mom is becoming an elder lady, and when the Nintendo Wii came out, that's not some years ago now. None of the kids were living at home anymore, but they again for Christmas bought the Nintendo Wii for the house, and we were peeling through the holidays. And then after a week, I got a call from my mom, and she was up in the age back then also already. And she's like, "I'm so sore in my legs. but I beat your high score in what's called ski jumping. So she has been home for a whole week doing by herself the ski jumping just to beat our record in Nintendo Wii. So it like we are really competitive in my family.
Yeah, I can see that. But it sounds in a nice way. That it doesn't sound like people wanted to cheat. They really want to work hard in a way to deal with that. Is that what I'm hearing?
Our rule is it's not cheating if you don't get caught. So
Right.
we
Okay.
so we are like when we play board games, it's the next level where you have the game going on, and then you have the game of figuring out how other people are cheating to win. So
Okay.
we actually added on more layers, but it's never to like I think our moral, like if I can thank my parents for something, it is our moral values has been always very high. So it's never to hurt anybody. It's more of we are so competitive, so of course we will do a lot to win.
Hmm. Yeah, but yeah, but of course that, yeah, I'm not surprised. And then it turns out that you're someone who has a lot of passion, a lot of drive, and want to become better version of, because in a sense that's what your mother did as well with the ski jumping. Is like, okay, she practiced for a full week, and it's not cheating, but because it's actually practicing and improving and everything. But the next Saturday that you're home is like, wow, what did you do? How did you end up beating me or whatever? It's like a lot of practice. That's
I think also to come back maybe to like what drives me now and the passion for whole like many people think, oh, you have such a deep passion for agile. And like, for me, it's not agile anymore. For me, it's actually to change the way we work. Like that has become. I'm so frustrated of the burnout or how we are treated by like robots and those things. I'm like, it's, like people are actually not happy. Why we know the challenge, we know we have science showing the phases. Why aren't we changing? And I think so that is my passion and my drive now is to make a better tomorrow. And that goes, if we sum up everything we talked about so far, right? It's about seeing bad leadership, the drive, the competitiveness of getting better. And for me, I'm just putting that together and saying there must be a better way in the way we work. And that's in all areas we are. Like, let the
and
robot take the jobs they can, and then let's make awesome jobs for a human being.
that's a little bit what I was wanting to ask, is that I think with Agile and the way I heard you talk is that it already feels like you've seen the better way, and you just want to help people in finding the better ways, and together finding, okay, this part was, and indeed, if some things are really not human, okay, let's give that to a robot. Let's have the, because in that way, I really like the way you said it, because that's how we always treated machines. I mean, we have all that kind of work that have been outsourced in one way or another to a machine. If it's either a car or a computer or a plane or whatever, we've been doing that for a whole year. And okay, robots might take another part. I have a robot in my garden that will take care of the grass, and that I'm happy that I don't have to do it anymore. And okay, I need to think about it, and because it has some bad things about it as well. But it's like, okay, what part do I don't want to do, and can I outsource to robots and have a better life one way or another in doing the things I like to do? And there are definitely, my partner will definitely say, but there are other parts of the garden I love to do. Don't buy a robot for that. I don't think there exists, but let me do this part. And that's a little bit what I hear you say. Let's find out what is giving us energy, what is
Yeah.
making us happy, and let's give that to the people who are happy doing that. And it's different for you than it is for me and for my partner and for lots of other people.
Exactly, and that's what makes a society drive, right? Like we are so different. Like,
Mm.
but I believe we all like our life is so short. It's worth to make an effort that it becomes good. And I think like and help other people because there's way too many that just has a job for the sake of job, and it's sad. It's sad for me
Mm.
to see people live like that.
Yeah, I agree. And then comes back to the original answer that you said, I'm happy that I was fired, because maybe that was not a good thing to be keeping around. I want to move to that next one, because it feels already a little bit that we moved in that direction. Like, what is your biggest achievement? And before I want to go there, and I'm even more interested in with you than with other people, is that the question behind is it easy for you to brag? And because you're so competitive, I'm really interested. Is that easy for, because this is basically a moment that you can brag about what you've done before, but is that easy with your
No,
competitiveness?
no, because it's like I don't see it as achievements. I see it's like I was thinking about what it was. I think if I now you're allowing me to brag, I think what have been lately outstanding for me has become I've drived like for many years now to like that whole I like the saying by becoming the leader I wish I had myself. To be able to, so I start in the role I am now for a year ago, where I now actually have people that want to join me in the company. So the company is not very sexy. Sorry, it is. Of course, I have to say that, right? When people now Googling, they will see what company it is. Company is sexy, but it's not typical like big insurance company. It's not often the people like, wow, I really want to work there. But I've now seen people want to join because I am there and because of my leadership style. So I think that like you like a manager, you hire your people, right? A leader, you get followers. That what turns a leader. And so I feel for me that's a big achievement. But it's also again I struggle to actually say it's my achievement because I have really turned my leadership style around to say how can I make them better. It's not about me. If they succeed, I succeed.
But somehow they succeed because you created the kind of environment, and of course it's not just you. I think this is I'm really glad that you added, because I think that's true for many people that have been talking and answered this question. For many people it's like it's not just me. If independent of what was their answer, there is always a team around it. But indeed, this is why I asked the question, how easy is it for you to brag? Because there's many people that say like, yeah, it's not about me, it's and but this is exactly why I'm asking the question, because it is sometimes really hard to be proud about some things that we achieved, even if it's not, because every time, even people who won the Olympics at whatever, it's always a team sport. Even if you do it alone, you have a full team around you of coaches, of other people that were helping you, doctors that are taking care, people that giving you the right food and everything. It Whatever we do, it's no longer a lone sporter doing something. Almost everything is a team sport. But at the same time, it's also what I'm hearing is that you surround yourself with a team. You make the environment and things like that. And yeah, you can be proud of that. Just a little bit like you were proud of your parents saying, hey, after 45 years, they're still together. That is also something that they can be proud and that you can be proud of in one way or another.
I think also another part of it, if I think about achievement right now, what I'm challenging myself is to keep my leadership style. So I like the word saying pickled. Now I'm part of a big enterprise, right? They have their culture and all of that, and simply stand up for what I believe in as the right leadership style. Corporate very quickly become processes and tools, right? Instead of individuals interactions, where I'm like, no, for me, I still have my values as leaders and I have to stick to them, no matter what this big enterprise try to impact me to.
And I like that you use the word pickled, and I think some of us will recognize that from the book and from the coaching of Jerry Weinberg, that used to say that if as a consultant, or if any person inside the person, you're much quicker pickled than around. So just like that happens with pickles itself, so with the whole everything there, and it's really, it is true. And at the same time, I think indeed when you behave the way you are, thinking about it, that's a way to maybe not avoid it, but at least postpone it as long as possible.
Create
And
awareness around it, right? Like
exactly, that's the thing I was looking for. That's the word. Thank you. So
I actually
having that.
think the more we now talk, the more I can see the circle around it, right? Because me now being at this big enterprise, getting impacted, but still also with the experience I had from a very previous, I put myself back after I had that experience. I said I would always secure myself so I can leave a job if I'm not happy. And that have now made me into, so that experience with the drive, right, with my focus on my leadership styles is actually what keep me above water now, and not trying not to get pickled in a big enterprise, because I can challenge, because I actually don't have anything to lose.
Yeah, because if you're not worried about keeping your job and whatever, you just want to be, yeah, to be that, what I'm hearing, authentic person, to
Yes.
with your values and everything that is, and say okay, and not be okay, I will say yes to a person because maybe that person might fire me or might tell something to my boss. No, if this person is bad behaving, I will show up with my values and say, well, wait a minute, that's not what I think is a good way to act, or things like that. That's what I hear you say.
Yeah, exactly.
And I want to go a little bit back. Why, for me, it was interesting to hear you say this about being competitive and at the same time having a hard time to brag, because I think it's also important for people to hear this, that sometimes people think if you're competitive, then, oh yeah, you have that big ego, and then you're always standing there. No, it's not because you're competitive that at the same time you want to shout out to the rest of the world. There is a part, and of course, a little bit like you said, the younger children and your family, the moment they win, they're there, but you're not a child anymore. At the same time, you also like, there's other parts, right?
I think I actually have a specific moment that actually changed it for me for a couple of years ago.
Mm,
And that was again like as I said earlier, like in my younger age I were very competitive. It was me. And what changed it, of course, the whole focus on my leadership side, but really have, I like to say, down to earth, is actually I had a conversation with a person that I want to help grow, and she one day asked me, Malene, how can you keep staying humble with what you achieved? And she made me look at saying, and it stuck so to me because I'm like, that is the view I want people to look at with me. It doesn't matter how much I achieve, I still want them to believe I'm humble.
mm.
And that stuck to me. That is my biggest achievement. I can achieve so much, but I still want people to see that I'm humble.
And
So that has
as
become
a
my
person
achievement,
who
right? The
leads you,
drive.
then yeah, I can definitely see that. That is and a hard achievement at the same time, I would say. I mean, this is, but it touches me so much when you say that, because it's what I've seen around me, and maybe it's because I'm also not young anymore. But what I've seen is that the people that reach the most are typically also the most humble. They're like, yeah, I know I've reached that, but at the same time, I also know that I worked hard for it. I know that I have a team around me, and I recognize all of that. And it's the people who didn't achieve yet, or who are have that have let their ego drive so much more, and don't always understand that because of that they might actually achieve less, because they're going over people, they're hurting people, and they're actually hurting themselves in the long run. And it's the humbleness that, for me, it's I said it in the beginning wrong. I said it's the people that reach most that are most humble. I think it's actually the opposite. It's when you're most humble that you realize, okay, this is not just about me. That allows you to reach out that next level, I think.
Yeah,
Or feel it to me.
I think that is important. Um, be kind to your people, right? Actually, that's just what it's about.
Yeah, yeah. There's not much to add to that. And I want to move then in that sense to, well, I don't know if it's similar thing, but to the question about the personal agility tip. Is there any tip that you can? We talked about being humble. That could have been a tip, but is there anything else you want to share with people?
For me, it's stop talking about and live it. like
Mm,
like many people, right, are like talking. Yeah, but do you actually live by it? Like don't I like to, I use a lot now since I got a parent, right? I say the same, does your kids do what you say, or do they do what you do? And that's
mm.
with everybody, right? Being a leader also, it's like, it's not okay you saying something but do something else. You have to show up.
It's not about the messages, the emails, the writings on the wall. It's how do you show up, what you're actually doing. And that if I talk with you, if I see in your work, I recognize that you're doing the things that you're saying that you're doing.
So let's
That's
stop talk the agile values, the scrum values, let's show it. Let's start treating each other better, right? Like now big enterprise, right? Like stop saying you want to be agile but not focus on the people, the simplicity, right? Like
it's yeah, let's be agile, let's all follow this rule and this scrum, whatever.
no, like let's be agile, we'll deliver faster. Yeah, because that's definitely looking after your people. Like
Exactly, but thanks for bringing that up, because it's indeed and it's somehow it's not always the case, and I might exaggerate a little bit, but sometimes you walk into a company, if it's for an interview or if you're just there for whatever reason, and you can just feel if they get it or they don't get it.
Yeah.
Okay, it could be part of my role if I have to help them to get there. But sometimes you have people say, yeah, we're doing agile, and then there is something that I kind of feel it like something's off. That
but don't you think, and I've the last year I've really actually thought about this question, because I see, like I ask myself, is it possible to actually change these big old enterprise? Because like culture and all of that, that's one thing, but the whole systemic way of building up, like I often ask myself, often they like this thing about you climb the ladder, right? And the higher up you get, the more you get paid, the more you change your life to live by that. And I'm like, so the higher up you get, the more you actually need your job because you need that high salary. Are they actually putting them in a situation where they're okay and willing to lose their job to actually change the company? And I like that complexity of the hierarchy really stands in a way of truly change, I believe. And now it's like deep thinking and complexity, but for me, and I might even now make it more simple than it's worth, but I'm just like, how can you then actually show up authentic, right? Because now we build all the politics in, and you said earlier also, I just there to step the next person in the back so you can climb the next step. Because we all drive, right? Like we all want more money. Not that it makes us happy, but that's kind of like the society we have driven now, created.
And for me, the coach answer it depends.
No, true. But it's just no.
Well,
it's fascinating.
One of the first times I've been helping out a large company to become more agile was back in, I think, in 2006, 2007, I think. And I left kind of frustrated after, I don't remember anymore, a year or something like that, and feeling a little bit like you were saying, like, is it even possible with this kind of large organization? But I kept in touch with some of the people, and 10 years later, they kind of told me some other things. And there were coaches before me, and there were lots of coaches after me. And now I can actually say that 10 years later, it's now even more. Yeah, with, like I said, 2006, so it's almost, well, not yet 20, and not yet 30 years, but still we're not yet 20 years, sorry, but we're moving there. But there is a lot of change that did happen in that organization. So I think for me, the larger organizations, usually when we get in, I had some kind of vision. I want to change this and that and that. And then after a year, I kind of disappointed, like I only did that. I've learned myself to kind of take a mental picture and to look back when I leave, like, where did I actually get? And in most cases, I got further than I thought I could get when I entered there. And if you then look back 10 years later, if people tell me about it, that actually there was a lot of change. Only I've improved, I've moved on, and I've expected even more of them. But I do think some of these things are changing. Not everywhere. And there's also other companies that have completely rolled back because whatever. But I do think there is a change in how would I put it, in the whole society, and a lot more people who are much more aware of that. So I do think there is something.
No,
and maybe I'm just naive to think that the overall balance is positive. I don't know, but that's
I like that. And you said something correctly there, right? Our challenge when we try to transform these big companies is they believe they can do it like in 2 months' time, right? And then it's done. Right? Like, yes, but it really, really takes long. And it's that thing about, so what we're doing right now is like a lot of companies saying, like, especially as an agile coach, how do you add value? And it's really to show those each small step you're taking of improvement. Because we can't, like I said for a week ago, I said somebody, I can't open the brain and operate the brain. It kind of has to be a journey when you have to go on to, like, it won't be fixed tomorrow, right? and it's to create awareness of that.
And
I
how
think will also
easy
help
is that
our
then
industry.
how easy is that then for a competitive person like you that wants to change the world? Is that because I can imagine that you lose your patience very quickly because you see that improvement, you see things that you want to change in the world, and then it doesn't happen overnight. How easy is that for a person like you?
I think it was a good reminder, as you're saying. It's about looking at the small wins and remind ourselves. And I think that's the balance of us as coaches, right? To create the transparency of what we are doing, but also we can't change people overnight. It's just like they need, like, we can only do so much, right? We can create the environment for them. They still have to take the step themselves. And I think to create transparency of that and celebrate the small wins. And of course, I think we are on this topic now because sometimes I forget about it. I get frustrated. I think we all there. You said yourself also, right? You think like you leave and you like, have I done something? Then you look through, yes, you have. And in other areas, you feel like, no, I haven't. I think, so the job I have now, I actually took on as a big challenge in general for me. Because so for many years I was a consultant, and I think you get in very, as you also said, right, you get in for a short period of time. Like it's very different to be permanent, and that was what I wanted to try, right? To be in the proper political game. And as an agile coach, been a consultant for many years, I was like, you sometimes forget how it is to actually be part of a big enterprise and the political game that's going on and all of that. And that's what's, so I see it as a big challenge to myself. Like, again, the growth, I think we can always constantly grow. And I think we have to remind ourselves, I think if you also get pickled as a consultant, right? Of that, I just come in and show you attitude, and then I can leave again. And I'm like, what if you're actually there and you have to be part of the change? You have to feel the pain if it doesn't happen. So that was the big challenge for me. And I think I'm finding it very interesting now.
Yeah, there's many things I want to react to. I want to, but I recognize that because I kind of did something similar. I'm not in a large organization right now, but I took, a role that is no longer. Well, I started less as coaching. There is some debate about what's the name of the role, but that's not so important. But it's really much more about taking the responsibility, like feeling much more part of the organization than an agile coach helping out, whatever. So that was felt for me really, really important. But I want to go to I want to add a little extra story that I think is kind of illustrative. That when my daughter was 6 years old, this is the age that we learn to read and write. I still remember that in the first week that she went to school to learn in the first year to read and write, she came home. I'm not sure if she was really crying, but really distressed. I was like, okay, what's happening? Like, it's been 2 days and I still can't write. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's not what we were expecting as a parent. Like, you have a whole year, you actually have your whole life to learn better to read and write. So it's not that we're expecting you after just 2 days in this year that we expected. But somehow for her, that was like, okay, I'm now starting this and now I will be able. And that reminds me so much about what you just said about these companies. It's like, okay, we get that agile coach. Okay, it's day 2. Why don't I see the change? Well,
You're spot on.
And I think and I see. Well, I think we both had these kind of clients. We recognize, we smile, and at the same time, it's also inside us because, like, of course, I want to kind of prove that I'm worth my money and that I can help you. So it's really finding that balance, I think. Do you have anything where that works for you? Do you have anything there?
I think it's that, again, I taught myself to look at the small wins and not drive for the bigger. And I think, again,
after day 2, do you see already small wins, or how do you deal with that? Because that's really fast, right?
Day 2 is quite controversial, right? I like, so I'm a CST, right? There you get the question when you apply to say, how would you want to change a person's life in 2 days? So it is possible. It is possible over 2 days. That always took out for me because you really have to be powerful if you change a person's life in 2 days.
I think it's very easy, but to make it worse in 2 days, to make it better in 2 days, that's the hard part, I think.
I,
If
I
I
think
start
that
to micromanagement and shout
no,
at
true, true, true,
everybody
true,
your
true,
work,
true, true,
you
true.
will be worse. Huh?
I think my passion helps me a long way in it. Because
Mm,
I feel like that whole, again, with followers, right? If you come in with open mindset and being transparent and that whole passion, like I often get that, wow, Malene, you're so passionate. It's so inspiring.
mm.
So, and that's not something I choose. That's where I am. Back to that thing, right? You have to be it. It's not something let me be passion today. Tomorrow I'm not. So it's really
So what
to
I'm
truly
hearing,
believe in what you do and what I
and
say,
be it,
like,
not just
yes, and
believe
be
it, but
it.
be it.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing is that after 2 days, you kind of inspire the people that they come back the third day to work. It's like, whoa, wait a minute, I can work again with you, and this, and you maybe you haven't changed anything yet, but already you inspired people that they think we can do something better. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, and that's getting that belief into people, right? We might have not haven't changed yet. So I'm like, I have a big belief now, especially if you have to change 30,000 people. You can't do that by yourself, right? So like I
Mm,
like that follower thing. And in everything I do there, I'm saying like it's not me, I cannot change you, but it's us together that will change this company.
I
And I
really
hear
like.
myself saying that over and over again.
Yeah, it's as a leader. Well, I don't remember who said it, but somewhere I read is that you're only a leader if you can create leaders that are creating leaders. And it's like, yeah, that's the kind of thing. It's not your followers. It's really having the impact on multiple levels. That
Yeah.
that is what leadership is about, and that's the hard part, of course.
But also the interesting part then.
Yes, thank you for adding that. Yeah, that it's really important. That's what gives the energy. That's what gives us that what drives us to come back to that word that we talked about before. I want to move to that next question, and I think you kind of went into a little bit in that you said, okay, you started out as becoming a parent when COVID hit. Did you do a lot of work remotely before COVID or not?
Yeah, I did quite a lot actually. I
Mm,
was quite lucky actually to have been doing remote work beforehand, which meant lockdown was not actually such a shock. I actually remember I trained all my colleagues at that stage. I was part of a consulting company on how to actually work remote and how to even do training remote.
mm.
So when you ask me that, I think for me it's become more of a. I'm surprised how little people have not worked remote and actually still struggle with it.
Hmm.
Like I
So, is
still
there,
get
for the people that are struggling, what is the kind of tip that you can help them make their life better or their remote work better?
my thumbs up rule is always either we all remote or none is remote. This hybrid thing doesn't work
And with
because
hybrid, you mean a meeting where half of us are in the office and half
mm,
of us are at home. That's the kind of thing that you're talking
mm.
about, hybrid, huh?
And that's with a set of facilitation eyes. And I stick very strong on that. If even let's say one person is online, I said then we all online, because you want to create an environment, right? And you cannot create an environment that sustain both of them at the same time.
Hmm.
I haven't seen that possibly happening successfully.
I like your addition to that because at the same time I completely agree, and at the same time I'm like, yeah, but wait a minute, that's exactly the same thing we said 20 years ago about remote work, and now we see that remote work is working. So I'm like, we don't know yet how to make hybrid working, but I have hopes that maybe we will be able to do that, but I have no idea
Yes,
how.
yes, yes, yes. So that's why I'm saying the AI stuff coming in. But then for me, then we are all remote.
Hmm.
Like if you put a pair of glasses on, right, and we make it all virtually, well then like even though we're sitting 10 people in the same room, we still remote then. And that's what I'm saying. Like if I often have that scenario, like, I've actually asked the 10 people that is in the room, put up your laptops then, and then we work there, because like just a simple thing of putting a sticky up. Do you do a sticky on a mirror board or do you do it on a wall? You can't do both.
Hmm. Not yet. Maybe we'll have tools that
Maybe
put it
is
because yeah, I'm now working in a company that's helping synchronize Jira board with Service One and all kind of thing. And I've seen a tool like that 15 years ago, but it no longer exists, where you could put a sticky on the wall. So the really Kanban board, the physical Kanban board,
Yes.
but there was a camera that was translating that to
Yes.
Jira and something like that. But unfortunately, the tool no longer exists. But yeah, these
So there
kind of
is stuff that happen. Like I've experienced a lot with it, but then we still talking about the delays and those things. It's just not as smooth, and that's what I'm saying. Like,
the tools are not there yet, and
no,
if it we but that's a little bit like if I talk about my first remote experience was in 2004, and Skype was just launched, and it was like, oh, we can finally see people from the other side of the world. If I would compare Skype back then to what we're doing now for recording, I didn't have I never took a screenshot of what I saw on screen, unfortunately, but I'm pretty sure that the view, the cameras, everything is way better. Just moving, yeah, you can definitely see me moving. Then I was already happy if I recognize the face. Let's be honest that if the
you're right.
lightning is still is important, but back then, yeah, I also didn't have a phone, so I remember still at some point we took a little bit of note on a napkin in a restaurant, and we literally had to scan it into a scanner to report it back to a computer. Today is like I take my phone, I take a picture, I send it to the other. All these tools have changed so much.
Yes,
Without that, remote work was indeed impossible 20 years ago. And that's a little bit the thing that I'm thinking, like, we have no idea what kind of tools we'll have in
no.
20 years, but I do hope indeed that there will be some kind of hybrid thing, but it will feel much more probably, like you say, about like remote,
But I
because
think
we're all
that yes, but I think we need to recognize, because I think too many companies is trying to make it work. Like let's just sometimes be honest to say it doesn't work, right? Like now we force people to, you have to come into the office and sit there and then be on a remote call, but why?
yeah.
And we forget often the why behind it, because the boss said so. Like that's simply not good enough. And that's back to, again, don't treat us as robots, right? We humans, like we need to understand
Yeah.
more why we're doing things instead of just doing it.
But we go into the office because the office building is costing so much money to rent, so we better use it.
Yeah. Then better sell it and give me more money, right?
Yeah, that might be a good idea. But yeah, but that it's again about being honest, being transparent about why we're doing stuff, and maybe we know that okay, we have a lease that we'll still have to pay for another year. Okay, let's figure out how we can work with that. Let's figure out what happens, and maybe indeed find other ways to be smarter with your time.
I actually think the very thing I see now is actually these companies that does start sales offices, and then they do hot desking and stuff. And I actually think, have they truly read the science behind open space and hot desking and the impact on the human? It doesn't seem like they have. I'm just like, you actually creating worse environment for teams now to survive. But you think it's brilliant, right? And I see that starting now all around the world, and that scares me actually.
And I've been looking for the document since a year or 10, but there was actually there was a great article about the whole modern office, and so the way things are organized and everything. And the very first company, it was a German company, if I remember correctly, that created so kind of open space places, but they had a lot of recommendations. You needed to have spaces where people could work alone. You
Yes,
needed to have
yes, yes,
you
yes, yes,
needed to
yes.
have spaces where people could work with two, with four. And the very first company that implemented, so there's a company that hired that company to look at what's good. And the very first client, they ignored all these kind of advice, and they just used open plan, and people are sitting
Exactly.
together. I'm like, no.
Exactly. That's also the one I referred to. I don't remember the name also, but there's so much science on it afterwards also. I'd saying like it's the open space hot desk is one version, part of it, the new way of working. But people just say, again, we're back to processes and tools, right? So over individual transaction, because now we just see money and what is most optimized for my money instead of the people.
Exactly, and that is indeed so much. Yeah, I feel we're going to move on to the next topic because I
Let's
feel
do that. Yes.
we can go on for a very long time, and indeed there is still a lot to learn about remote. The next question is, what is a book you have read that you want to talk about?
I think the one that stands out for me is that oh, now I forgot the word. Restructure organization. Yes, reinventing
Reinventing our
organization.
organization. That
Exactly.
Lalu.
That was,
So
yes.
tell for the few people that haven't heard about the book, there still are some people that haven't heard about the book. Why should they read the book? Why do you like that book so much?
Firstly, because you can get an illustrated version that is easy read. I like that.
But thank you. Thank you very much, because indeed I had a discussion with a friend that said, oh, this is a very big book. Well, actually, there's two versions. There is the illustrated version and there is the thick version. If you first encounter this, maybe you start with the illustrated version. If you want to learn more afterwards, you can still read for the detailed version, but there's at least two versions that I'm aware of. So thank you for bringing that up.
I think that's no, I think for me, that's the one. It's one book that really can challenge leaderships or in general people's mindset about, like, as I said earlier, right? That whole thing for me is not just agile anymore. It's about let's make companies better for humans. So I don't even think he refers to the word agile once in the book. No. Not at all, hey. And if we're not talking about a framework or anything, it's actually just this whole, how should we actually structure? And I always am driven by data and the impact and those things, right? Like, and also the whole fact saying we don't always all have to achieve that either, but be aware. So we go back to the transparency and awareness of what kind of company would you like to be? What kind of organization would you like to be? And I think I am lacking that companies ask themselves that question. I think that, like, it challenges yourself, right, to look into how would we like to be and give some examples. I love practical examples. I'm a very practical person instead of just theoretical, right? It's a very practical book, even though it's also theoretical. It's relatable, and I think that was for me fascinating. It's not like some of these learning book can become I read a chapter and I'm falling asleep. I didn't do that with that book. That was maybe also why I stood out, and because it actually talks to my passion, right? Saying, like, we need to change the way we work for the future. And I think it's done in such a brilliant way of challenging your mindset, but also still being the safety of saying, but you don't have to go there. We also need some of let's call it the older structure way model, right? But again, be transparent and think about it.
That up, because indeed he's talking about multiple ways to organize, and some people, when they read the book, they think, oh, you all need to go to that last version. Maybe not. Maybe your company, and probably you don't want to go from the very first thing that he describes immediately to the last one. You need to have some steps in between. You need to help people to understand some parts. And maybe for your organization, you don't want to go to a teal organization, but maybe some of the others might be okay for you. But at least that's how I read the book. Explore what are the options and see what is working for you. And I can imagine that some leaders would never want to. It's kind of frightening for some people, some of these leadership styles, I would say.
So exactly, and I had some conversation with some leaders that read it and said to themselves, but what is it in you that makes it uncomfortable?
That's really powerful, because it's indeed it's yeah, maybe it's about the way we grown up, maybe it's some leadership styles. We talked about parenting styles. Maybe there is something there, and again, we don't need to psychologize or going into that, but there is definitely a reason why people prefer some kind of thing and not some kind of other things. That's
so I definitely think that's a book that's worth reading, and I love the safety of saying you don't have to be teal, as you like. It's not always. It definitely made me think, and I even also use it in organizations, saying the whole organization can be different things.
Yeah, different departments.
Yes, the complexity of it, like especially now working in insurance, finance, right? There's a lot of governance. Maybe you're not jumping to teal immediately.
Well, there is also especially if we're talking about banking, if we're talking about insurance company, we're talking about money from other people. Okay, there are some security systems that need to be there. There are some rules that you need to do because you're still protecting people, their money or their lives. If you're an insurance company, there's definitely something like there needs some kind of governance. There needs some kind of tool that, that's definitely something. There is a reason why we have some of the rules in bankings and insurance things, because we're talking, okay, we might consider changing that, but if we change it, we still need to have another safety net. We still need to have another kind of thing, because we've seen luckily maybe not the last years, but some years ago we had some problems with banking and with insurance company that went bankrupt or almost bankrupt. So we definitely need to have some security systems to avoid these kind of things. So it's important that we look at these kind of things. Thanks for bringing that up. And indeed, it's a book that, many people, at least makes them challenge and think about what's the kind of organization that would work for me. Thanks for bringing that up. And I want to move to, for me, a very interesting question is that, and especially again after this conversation, because you bring up so many different topics, what's a question that I didn't ask that you think I should also ask you?
I think we covered a lot today, hey? I like to say, if you open me up, I'll keep talking. I need to get a stop button. I find it like it's the passion driving it, right? A specific question, I actually, no, there's nothing. I think we touched it a lot. I think one of my other big passions that also been is to drive the growth of coaches and scrum master in the world, and especially also now in South Africa and those things, right? And I think the whole, I don't know if it's a specific question. I'm just building on what have we not talked about that is close to my heart. It's actually that whole thing about empowering people, and if we want the world to work in a new way, right? It's like we're actually too few in the world that is capable of helping it move in the right direction, because it's still, even though it's getting older and older, it's still such a new thing. And I think that's the whole community building across the world. That's something that's special to me.
And do you have
more comment than a question, but yeah.
Well, it kind of brings also a question. You moved already to South Africa, but there's other ways that you work on creating that community in a more global way. What are the kind of things you've been doing in that kind of direction?
So I'm trying, of course, to be a big part of the whole, like going to the global Agile conference and speaking around the world, and really grow my international network and see what's out there, see what is learned from other players. I think maybe it is easier for me because I have done the move and feel already there. My network have grown, right? And when you get to speak at international conferences, you also easier to grow your international network. And then also now I'm part of the Scrum Alliance board, which also give me a view in, right? Like I've served for over 5 years now in the Agile community. Is very strong in South Africa, and for me, I want to take it broader than that. So like last year I joined the Scrum Alliance board, and for me that's to serve the community of what we're doing and actually bring my humbleness and passion into I see a lot of like, now we have a great conversation here, and I already, like, we have the respect for each other, right? Else we couldn't have a conversation like this. But there's also competitiveness happening around in our industry, and those things. And I think we need to be careful of that, and more like, I see there's enough work for all of us, right? So let's rather create a community. Like, we need to create that movement to really make the impact in the world if we truly want to change the way we work.
Thanks for bringing that up, because indeed we're working and we're living in different countries, but still it feels like we should collaborate much more than we need to compete. And I've had in the past experiences with people both from inside my country and others that it felt like, wait a minute, you feel attacked, or you feel that you want to compete with me. I just want to collaborate with you. I want to work together with you. I want to give you a platform and help out in multiple ways. And It's not because I reach out to you or whoever that it means that I want to steal your work or whatever. And that, because like you say, there is still a lot of work. There is still a lot of need of changing the world, and so there's no need to be competitive.
No.
There is a lot of need of the world to change. That is a very important thing. So thanks for bringing that up, because it's yeah, sometimes it feels, and there is a lot. Yeah, yesterday I talked with Bob Galen about a lot of the things that are happening on LinkedIn. Sometimes it feels like bashing. Like, no, like for me, it should be like, okay, I might ask a question to push you, like
Yes.
you say, to the next level, or to understand you, but it shouldn't be about, hey, I don't like what you're doing, you're really stupid, and was like that. No, it should be much more about building on each other. And for me, that. Well, if you look back at the Agile manifesto, these were 17 people that were competitors one way or another, but
Yeah.
they were able to postpone their differences and to come out with a document. And depending on which version that you hear about the story, it was not an easy day, but in the end result, it was a very nice result, a very nice document of these 17 people that said, hey, this is something that we agree on.
And it's interesting what you say there with LinkedIn. I often think to myself, I have, as you also can see today, right? I have a lot of passion. I have a lot I want to share, and I would love to have this conversation. But I never post on LinkedIn because, firstly, I'm not my English written is not that good. I've never been strong in language. So I'm always actually so afraid that either I'll get knocked over for my spelling, or I will get knocked over for something I haven't seen in my agile knowledge or something. Because, and you mentioned there, right? Like, because our community is actually so hard on each other, because it really feel like we have to compete on who is best instead of just making each other better.
I recognize, well, the part of the language triggers a lot in me, because of I really was in high school, I was really bad in French and English, and at a level that I was really afraid. There's part of that I can blame on the school system, but I also see in the spelling, I'm in my own language, my mother tongue, I'm really bad at spelling, so I'll make spelling mistakes, but somehow it feels less threatening if I make spelling mistakes in English, because I have the tendency that people think, okay, it's not his first language, so it's okay. Maybe it's just me that I don't care, because I know it's my fourth language or my third language, depending on how I count. But I worry less about that. But in my mother tongue, in Dutch, it really feels like people are pushing so much if I make spelling mistakes, and it's sad, because it's also about communicating and about, do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, well, why do you care about my spelling mistakes? I know I'm not the perfect writer. I don't aim to that. And the interesting part is, what I've learned over the years, that some of the best writers that inspire me most were dyslexic, were really bad writers, but they had good editors. And this is what I've learned over the years, is like, this is not about, the best books are not written by by authors that don't make spelling mistakes. They are written by people who are good at telling stories. And for me, that's also what we do in the Agile community. We want to inspire people, and yes, maybe I'm telling something wrong, and I've been bitten by people from the Scrum Alliance and the other people that said, oh, but you used iteration and you didn't say sprint. And it's like, I understand why it's important, because it's a brand, but at the same time, like, come on, I'm trying to talk with a person to make sure that he or she understands it. And if I'm using sprint, they want to run as fast as possible. And maybe that's not the message I want to bring in this kind of company, because of competitiveness. And yes, if I'm working with Scrum, I want to make sure that they understand it, but I also want to make sure that they understand the message behind it. And when you talk about Scrum or Agile, Kanban, whatever, we'll all have some misunderstanding at some point, and when people tell me, I will learn about it. So that's
exactly. So I think we can both agree, hey, to just ask our community to let's be more open to each other and support each other instead of beating each other down.
bashing on
that's
each
the
other.
message. Yeah.
Let's be open. So that's maybe it was not a question, but at the same time, I brought a very important topic to there. So thank you for that. And I want to move on, and we think about supporting the community and everything. So that kind of leads me to that question: who do you think I should ask next? Do you want to invite for me?
I was looking over who you have interviewed, and you interviewed some amazing people. So the one that actually truly stand out is Mario from Brazil. A little bit of a yes, that's my Mario. And now I even say my Mario. I think many people that knows me from the international community, he will say Mario is my sidekick. A little short funny story. We met each other for the first time. So he's from Brazil, right? And I'm from South Africa. And we, again, the power of our community, we met each other for the first time. I think it was in the London gathering for many years ago now. And
wow.
we were both there, didn't really know anybody. And we sat next to the same round table at lunchtime. And we introduced each other to introduced us to each other. And since then, you know, when you just meet somebody, you just click and you just have fun. And we had such a deep respect from each other. And we really created that thing about learning from each other. And we went on the CST journey together. And I think that's what many people know us for, was like, we had different time zone, and still we used weekends and nights to upskill each other, to train with each other. And it was just a true partnership and deep passion for both of us of what we do. And I think what makes us, again, I say us because for me it's a partnership. We both very humble, and I think that's one thing I learned from Mario, was to stay humble also, and just be open to learn from each other.
I'm just listening with goosebumps on my arms, because when you tell that story, what is interesting is, like you say, you're from a completely different, not just country, but time zones. Everything is different, and still you're able to go on such a trajectory together, which is not an easy one. From different things, you basically you just met during one gathering, which is, what is it, maximum a week or something like that. So from going there to working globally together and going on such a trajectory together, that's a wonderful story to share.
Oh yeah, that's definitely been a special journey for me, and always Mario is a special person now in my life, right? So no, definitely he's another good agile person in the world.
So thanks for sharing that, because that's, these are the kind of connections. And you say, I have some there are some big names here, but for me it's not just about the big names. It's really about, also about the people for the future, that the young people that are now leading the world. And of course I love talking to, for example, Linda Rising, when a person with 80 years old, it's like so much wisdom, so much experience. And at the same time I talk to people who were just barely in their 20s, which are as inspiring for me. That's a little bit where that is for me the community, that bigness, that larger things. And it's not so much about the wisdom, but it's also about, and I want to circle back to something you said earlier on about being. And then the age doesn't really matter. It's about recognizing, and I can so see myself sitting at the conference, at the round table. You introduce yourself, or I introduce myself to someone, and you immediately kind of know, hey, it clicks with that person. That like we share a vibe, and there is a lot of people that I have in the community where I have that. I actually have very similar kind of feelings here. Like, we've never met physically, but there is, and that's also for me part of what I want to show to people. Yes, it's remote, but we haven't met each other, and we can still create, if we do take the time, we do take the attention to listen to each other, to share stories back and forth. And it takes then almost, where we're not yet at 2 hours of talking, but it takes a while. This is not something you do in 5 minutes. It's really taking the time to listening to stories and to hear what we want to share.
I think it's also important to add this. So I didn't want to stop it, but we were a bit harsh on our own community for a short while ago. I think like we are also many that really have that friendship. Like now, if I go to any of the Agile conferences in the world, right, there's always a bunch of people you actually feel like you're friends, because like we are actually there to support each other. We are there. There's good people also out there. We were a bit hard earlier, right?
Yeah.
We have to remember that also.
Yeah, but that in that sense, it was in the right order. It's like we need to make sure that is recognized and it's there. The reason why I think we 20 years down the path are still here as a community is because of that. And a lot of that was created at conferences, but I still think we can also do it. And you're a very nice example. If you go to such a trajectory together, completely remote, it shows that actually remote work is possible. We need to take the time, we need to make it work, like you say, in weekends and time zone differences and everything. We can make it work. We do have the tools, we do have, and now we just need to basically give the attention to these kind of things.
I 100% think remote work can work. It's the hybrid that doesn't, because we doesn't have the tools yet, right?
Yeah, and well, and we'll see 20 years down the road if we have better tools and things like that. Okay, if people want to reach out and connect and learn more about you, what's a good way to connect with you?
LinkedIn.
So and that is probably this one.
Yes. I'm quite searchable because I have 4 names and I'm only one in the world with those 4 names combination. That also means I can't do anything bad, hey, because you easily can find me.
That's the thing. It reminds me of Kevlin Henney, who said something similar. I have to thank my parents for giving me a good Googling name way long before Google existed. It's I recognize that. I have the opposite is that I have someone in my family which has the exact same first name and last name. But to make it worse, because it's family, we also share the same grandfather. So that means that my second name is also the same as with this person. So that doesn't help.
You're not Googling.
Well, that it made me, and that maybe not that nice, but it made me when I started working on the internet to make sure that everywhere I immediately subscribe to my own name and said, okay, that makes sure that people look for me, that this is where to find me. So yeah, that kind of helped in that kind of way. But it unfortunately for indeed people that were looking for my nephew, because they sometimes find me. But of course, we know each other and we share, we share stories. But it did happen before that people reached out to me were for him and vice versa. That does. So in that sense, you have better luck that you're a unique person, not just as a person, but also have a unique name. So that might help there. Well, anyway, I really want to thank you because it's been a wonderful conversation. I've enjoyed it very much. It's always interesting when I do this with a person that I haven't met physically. That okay, I hope and I think these questions help out to create connection, but that doesn't always happen. That it's this lovely. So thank you for your time.
That was a true pleasure. Definitely enjoyed it. So thank you so much for your time also.
And I do hope that we'll run into each other one way or another. I've said it before on the show. There's some strange reason I've never been to a Scrum gathering, but it's really time-wise. It's not that I don't want to go there. It's just that my agenda didn't work. And I know that I think that I saw something in South Africa, and I don't know. I remember seeing it somewhere that I thought, oh, maybe now I should make it work. So
yeah, we have a very famous regional gathering every year in South Africa.
I've heard so definitely I should. Again, it depends a little bit on my agenda with my family. We talked about all of that, about how the work-life balance and things like that. But well, I definitely want to make sure that I can reach you and see you once in real life. So
that could be awesome. Hey.
Okay, well, have a nice evening.
And you, hey, bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.